There once was a prince named Dan. This prince was the son of a king who loved him with a special love. And he gave all of his people this same special love, because to him each one was special, like his own child. This king was like the golden sun that shines on the good and the bad, on the flowers and the weeds. Some people try to lock themselves away from the sun like Grumpy here. He won't get very warm that way, but the sun may find him anyway. This is a wish bush. Take a good look, there aren't too many around. Its fruit is tasty and gives you your wish too. Where can you find one? Only in this king's wonderful garden where flowers never die. In that wonderful garden Dan lived. There were also many other wonders. The angels walked, the animals talked. You would have liked it there. But Dan didn't always like it. It was a little too perfect. Besides, he'd never been anywhere else. One day, he wanted a change. Here you see him looking at the World Well. The World Well was on Black Hill. There was something unpleasant about Black Hill. Nothing grew there. The animals avoided it. The king had warned Dan to stay away from it. But today, Dan was tired of the wonderful garden. Things were too easy there. He could do whatever he liked and whatever he pleased except... Well, why not have a look in the World Well? A tiny voice seemed to say, "What's in the well? Who can tell? Don't you wish you knew? Better find out what it's all about. You won't sleep until you do." So Dan decided to climb Black Hill and look into the World Well. Suddenly, down! The well was very deep. All the way down he was forgetting, and when he landed, he'd forgotten who he was. A rock, maybe, thought Dan. He tried being a rock for a while. Then a tree, and then a bird, and then a tiger. Lots of other things, too. Each time he would say, "Aha, that's me all over." Then he would change his mind. "No, that's not it," he would say, and he'd try being something else. Of course, he wasn't really any of these things. They were all just costumes, like you wear at Halloween. Costumes and more costumes. When he got tired of one or it wore out, he'd go to the costume room to trade it in for another. Now, the costume room was a funny place. Maybe it looked a little scary from the outside. Who could tell what was in there? But once inside, it wasn't a bad place. It was chock full of costumes. There were so many to pick from. So many things to be. At last, he tried being a boy. This time he was sure he had it right. He tried being a bad boy and a good boy and a beautiful girl. He tried many other costumes, too. As time went on, trying on costumes seemed more and more important. He didn't care who he really was anymore. When a costume wore out or got torn, back he'd go to the costume room. Then he'd have fun deciding whether to be a clown or a man about town or sailor or tailor or a preacher or a kindergarten teacher or whatever. Sometimes Dan met people who were hard to like, and I'm sorry to say he didn't try too hard. He felt he was much better than they were, though he'd forgotten that he was a prince. Do you see that sooty little animal beside Dan? That was his pet, I Love Me, egging him on. "You show 'em, Dan," he'd hiss softly. He loved to see Dan get mad. Dan didn't know it yet, but his pet was planning big trouble for him. I Love Me had made Dan angry at nothing but a big billboard. Hidden behind it were his own brothers and sisters, princes and princesses, all of them. They couldn't help laughing at Dan's mistake. But they didn't know who they really were either. Dan was not alone. They'd fallen into the world well, too. They'd forgotten who they were and the wonderful garden. They spent their time trying on one costume after another, hoping the next one would be the right one. They were just as lost as Dan. Here we see Dan in his house, not very happy. He tried on so many costumes, the one with the fancy ermine cape, and the one with the pretty face, the one with all those tattoos, and all the rest. Costumes, phooey, he thought. Is this all? What's the use? Why am I here anyway? What was that? Outside the window, someone was whistling, low and sweet. The sound came stealing into the room where Dan sat. Dan left the room. He left his old life behind. On he went, though night was coming on, and the trail was hard to see. The footprints led straight into the dark, forbidden forest. Dan knew that a few had gone into this forest before, but none had ever come back. But this didn't seem to matter now. He just had to find the one who was whistling. As he went, he was surprised to find himself singing. All my songs were for this one song, all my loves for this one love. The pines moved strangely in the night air. They seemed to be whispering about him. But Dan went on. Deep in the woods, curled up on a flower bed, he found someone sleeping. An old man, the one who can take you home. He wasn't big, but he made Dan feel small. Dan waited for him to wake up. He felt sure this was the one who was whistling. He also felt sure the old man would be happy to see him. After all, hadn't he left everything behind just to find him? Dan thought he had left everything behind, but his pet, I Love Me, had followed him through the night. The old man awoke with a roar. "What do you want with me?" Dan thought a minute, and then he said, I want to go home, sir, wherever that is." "Well, then kill that dangerous animal." And the old man pointed right at his pet, I Love Me, and handed him a sword. The forest was suddenly bright, though the sun was not yet up. "Kill I Love Me? Oh, I couldn't. Why, he praises me all day long. He tells me I'm right and others wrong. But then he saw the old man looking at him, and he knew the old man was right. I Love Me began to sputter and hiss and show his claws. Dan picked up the sword and cut off his head. I Love Me turned out to be bigger than Dan had thought. He would have made a mouthful of me one of these days, thought Dan. "Good boy," said the old man. And together they went off to the mountain that leads home. More and more, as he went toward home, everything, the clouds, the rocks, the streams, reminded him of a face. But what face? Somehow he knew that he was going home to see this face again. They passed the enchanted places, the place of music, the place of fragrance, the place of light. When the way got too scary, the old man blindfolded Dan. Dan felt safe because the old man had him by the hand. Each time, just when it seemed that earth and sky were offering him their finest secrets, the old man said, "Quit stalling, let's get a-going." At last Dan couldn't stand it. "Give me a little time to enjoy myself. I'll never see these wonders again." The old man looked at him almost gently and then said, "If you knew where I'm taking you, nothing could tempt you to stop, even for a moment." Dan had to cross the terrible lake of power. Drink one drop of this water, and power to do anything is yours. The day was very hot. Dan was very thirsty, but the old man had forbidden even a sip. The water was deep and murky. A wicked nixie owned this lake. She was a pretty thing besides being wicked, with long hair and a long fishy tail. She wanted to see Dan drown. Dan felt something tugging at his leg. 2 slim green hands were pulling him under, and then the water cleared. Dan saw that the floor of the lake was covered with stones. Stones that were once boys who wanted a drink too badly. There was a great tug-of-war. Who would get Dan? Back and forth they tugged him, till he felt he was stretching. Suddenly, the nixie's slippery grasp was broken, and quickly the old man pulled him out. "Have it your own way," said the nixie, who then disappeared with an angry splash. Now Dan was across the lake. He could drink as much as he liked without becoming stone. The nixie came back to offer him some water in a shining cup. But Dan wasn't thirsty anymore. He had won. Closer and closer to home he came. More and more he longed for that face he couldn't quite remember and would never forget. Sometimes at night on the long grassy prairies, he went to sleep dreaming that somewhere that face loved and cared for him. On they went, through many secret winding ways, through terrible dangers, through beauty so bright it hurt the eyes. They came at last to the great gulf. The great gulf! How could they ever leap over that awful blackness? On the other side, far, almost too far to see, gleamed the walls of home. A breeze sprang up across the gulf, and it was sweet, with laughter, music, and the smell of 1,000 flowers. It blew from that wonderful garden where the king walked among flowers that never die. And Dan remembered. The garden was his home. He was a prince. The face he missed was his own father's. He'd thrown all this away forever. He could never get back. Dan began to cry. The old man grabbed him and began shaking him. "Did you really think," he said, "did you really think I would take you all this way and leave you stranded?"